here's the thing about false flag operations. And false flag operations are things where intelligence operatives will hoax something to create a decoy and to create a nexus of disinformation, a sort of a push of false information and events. And this is exactly where Wernher von Braun on his deathbed, his biggest concern was that at some point they would pull the trigger on something that was hatched in the late 50s and 60s, and that is to stage a false, quote, alien attack, like the movie Independence Day and all the other science fiction rubbish. But what's interesting about it is that, you know, when I first heard that, I had already been briefed by several other people who had actually been on an interagency committee planning to do that. Now, let me repeat that. Where it was full, and I said, when were you on this committee when it was fully operational, where they could stage things that would look like UFOs, creatures that would look like aliens, and they said, oh, well, that was in 1974, and it had been going for quite a while before then. Now, this was a guy, and then I ended up meeting several different people who didn't know each other, who had been involved in various components of this false flag operation. And so, and I started thinking, well, what is this about? And one of them said, look, you cannot keep growing the multi-trillion-dollar military-industrial complex without a bigger and bigger and bigger enemy. And, you know, the Soviet Union had collapsed. Okay, then we had this global terrorism threat, so we could, you know, invade whatever countries in the Middle East and spend a few trillion. But ultimately, you know, Leon Panetta, the CIA director that I had gotten a lot of briefing materials to in the early Obama administration period, you know, he once said, he says, we're spending over $100 billion a year chasing less than 70 al-Qaeda people in Afghanistan. This is insane. So the bottom line is, how do you grow that machine, this military-industrial machine? Well, you've got to have a bigger threat. Well, so the ultimate one would be an interplanetary threat. And that's what they've been preparing the masses for through documentaries, through movies, through false information, through the UFO subculture, frankly. And I think that the reason for it is that they know that you have to prepare psychologically people to hate something enough to be able to then pay in blood and treasure for the next war. So this is, as insane as this sounds, this is the thinking behind folks, some of the people in these covert programs. And I was warned back in the early to mid-'90s, it was probably 93, 94, 95, that if I started exposing that would be the thing that they really would be upset about. It is because they don't care if people believe UFOs are real and that ETs are real, so long as they believe that there are enough of them out there that are a problem to support the next big war push. So it's sort of like the Gulf of Tonkin incident in the Vietnam War, where we kind of exaggerated and staged this whole thing so that so Johnson would panic and the Congress would panic and authorize a massive expansion of the Vietnam War when we were getting ready to get the hell out of there, which is what we should have done. So these things happen throughout history all the time. This is not a conspiracy theory. So I always tell people, let the buyer beware, caveat emptor. You've got to be aware that there is this tendency to put out frightening information. And I tell people, it's way too late for world peace. We have to have universal peace because we've squandered 100 years where we should have had world peace, and now we're in this situation where we're poised to become interplanetary. So we have got to get our consciousness to a point where we cannot be manipulated. It's like the old song from the 70s, we won't be fooled again. We cannot be fooled again. And unfortunately, now this is, you know, my own take on this, the majority of people who get involved in the UFO subculture do get fooled again, because there's so much information out there that is frightening, when I think the really thing we need to be frightened of is the degree to which we are manipulated with fear. No one's talking about that. And I think this is the thing that keeps me up most at night, is the extent to which people can be stampeded into something like we were in Vietnam, or for that matter, Iraq. when obviously there were no weapons of mass destruction there, and we knew it. But we still, everyone got stampeded into it because of what happened on 9/11. So now the question is, could there be a cosmic 9/11? There could be. And I have met with men who have been on these interagency teams where those things have been planned and ready. They could push a button and launch it tomorrow, and it would fool virtually everyone from the White House on down. So I think the public needs to be not fooled again. And so, I always tell people, you got to put a light there where this sort of dark and, sort of crazy ideas keep festering, and kind of pull it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz, where you have the old guy back there, scaring the bejeebies out of one, and then they finally pull the curtain back and it's this old crudmudgeon. Well, that's a lot of this. The whole fear that people have about aliens. Believe me, if you've got the ability to travel from one star system to another and they were hostile enough to hate us, it'd be over. It wouldn't be like one ufologist, they've been warring over Earth for 290 million years. Really? With what? Clubs and machine guns? I said, come on. We're talking about civilizations that are capable of interstellar transdimensional travel. The technology associated with that level of sophistication, you could terminate all life on Earth in a nanosecond. It would be point, set, match, and frankly would have been when we detonated the first atomic bomb if these ETs were truly hostile. Now, this does not mean that all these civilizations are particularly like what we're doing, but I don't like what humans are doing 90% of the time. Come to my emergency department on a Saturday night and see all the stabbings and gunshots and strangulations and horrors and rapes. Humans have a lot of growing up to do. So it doesn't mean, however, that they are overtly hostile to the human race and Earth, but they're very concerned. Here's what I think people need to flip the question around. What are they concerned about here? I think they're concerned about humans developing these technologies and becoming an existential threat to other star systems. That's what I think the